I was awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for gallantry under deliberate enemy attack, but what I'm proud about is my medal was for saving a life and not taking a life. I'm currently a chief of police. In 2016, I had 6 cases involving the shooting death of people in psychological crisis, horrific deaths of people that can't really control what they're doing. It was heartbreaking for me. My mission is to change law enforcement for the better. We have to treat them differently. We have to treat them as it's a disease like cancer or heart attack, and the only thing we have is our integrity. Only 1% of the public ever serves in law enforcement, serves in the military, gets a PhD. I've accomplished all these things in my life. I made this difference in the world. My name is Dr. Roy G. Taylor, and I am a legacy maker. Hi, I'm Dr. Colonel Chief Roy Taylor. I'm an expert in federal court on police procedure matters. I have a doctorate in criminal justice. I'm a retired colonel from the United States Army Military Police Corps, and I'm currently a chief of police and have served as a federal, state, local, and now private police chief for the past 31 years.
Roy Taylor rises from an Ohio adoption center to forge a life defined by discipline and unyielding service.
I grew up in a small town in Amherst, Ohio. I was adopted at the age of 1 year old. My biological mother wasn't able to handle the pressures of a newborn baby, so I was put in a county adoption center, and I was very lucky to have William Fay Taylor and Marie Ernestine Taylor adopt me, especially already being 1 year of age. A lot of people want a newborn, and they were pleased to take someone that was a little bit older, which I'm very grateful for. They provided a very loving family with a Christian upbringing. I was very appreciative of their giving me this type of life and teaching me the values that would lead me through my career in law enforcement and increase my level of education to a PhD. I've always been a very organized person and always been a very driven person. My dad was a part-time police officer and a full-time Ford Motor employee. He would get up at 4:30 in the morning, go to work at the Ford plant. He would be home by 2:30 in the afternoon, change into his police uniform, and then work a 3 to 11 shift for the city, and then do that 5 days a week. But that work ethic was instilled in me early on, and I believe that's one of the reasons I've been so successful in life and been able to accomplish more things than most people ever do.
Mentorship arrives in the form of a local commander.
I think one of the people that was most influential, other than my parents, was a gentleman that was our Civil Air Patrol commander. He lived one street over from me. His name was Bill Penfield, and I believe his dedication to a voluntary organization and the shaping of the young men's lives that were in our squadron, again, was very impactful for me and showed me the importance of giving back to the community. Along the pathway, I decided that I would like to go to the military academy, specifically the Air Force Academy. I went to my guidance counselor at the end of my 9th grade year, and I said, I'm interested in going to the military academies. How do I apply? And his response was, well, you have to be an honor roll student and have a senator's recommendation. Well, I knew that I was an average student because I really didn't apply myself. I didn't think that a police officer needed to learn about the capital of Peru or how to do algebra. They just needed to understand the law and how to enforce it. Again, myopic opinion, but that was my world belief. But I decided, I would like to have an opportunity to have a career in aviation, and that the Air Force Academy would do that. The part that was most daunting to me was having a senator's recommendation. I thought that, well, that's just something that rich kids have, and my dad works at the Ford plant and a part-time police officer. I could never get that. But that was the motivating factor for me to start dedicating myself to my studies and applying myself, and I quickly became an honor roll student and met all requirements for graduation by the end of my 11th grade year. So that allowed me to get out of high school early and enter the military, where I could start earning some real-world experience.
Roy Taylor rises through the Civil Air Patrol, but confronts a leadership void in policing. A handshake on the qualification range shifts the battleground to federal court.
The Civil Air Patrol was instrumental in my honing my skills as a leader. Each rank in Civil Air Patrol is guided by 2 written tests and a physical fitness assessment. I wanted to earn 1 rank every month so that I could quickly get into the officer roles and be a leader in my squadron. That goal led me to becoming a flight leader. It then became a squadron commander, and soon after that I was on the group staff, which was a number of different squadrons in the Cleveland metropolitan area. From there I became the group commander and onward to wing staff, which was the entire state. And eventually I was appointed wing commander, so I was a cadet colonel in charge of all the cadet programs throughout the state of Ohio. That experience and the knowledge that I gained was instrumental in my becoming the leader that I am today.
Experience on the force reveals a critical flaw in traditional promotion.
I've always felt like I was a leader, and I believe that my ideas are solid and based on modern principles, and that some of the leaders that I had didn't have very much education, that their ascent into the supervisory roles was primarily based on seniority, which didn't make them the best supervisor. They didn't receive enough supervisory training, they didn't understand the dynamics of supervising people, and I wanted to change that. Once I became a police chief, I decided that I wanted to expand my knowledge base outside of criminal justice, and my master's degree is in occupational safety, and didn't really consider being a PhD until I became an expert witness in federal court. And I wanted to be able to interact with the jury so that they would understand that I am an expert in my field and that I have the credentials to back that up. More than just experience, but also the advanced degree and many thousands of hours of specific training on different law enforcement topics. So that's what my driving force was, to get a PhD, not to become a full-time professor or write a lot of books, but mostly to enhance my resume so that the jurors would feel that my opinions were based on not only experience, but also academic knowledge.
A veteran student opens the door to a new career.
One of the many things that I do is I teach and hold qualification courses for retired law enforcement officers. One day I had a student, his name was Mel Tucker.
I'm a retired chief of police from Tallahassee, Florida, and I wanted to get my retired law enforcement officer's concealed carry permit in North Carolina. So I sought out a firearms instructor to get me certified, and he was the firearms instructor. Roy always had class after the training itself where he talked about the law, Graham v. Conner and Tennessee v. Garner.
And at the end of this instruction, he said, "Wow, you're really good at this. You really know the case law behind it." And he said, "Have you ever thought about being an expert witness?" And I said, "No, I don't really consider myself an expert." He said, "No, you are an expert, and I'm going to teach you how to do it if you're interested." And I said, "Well, certainly I would enjoy that." And he invited me to his home. He gave me some of his books. He gave me some of his reports that he had written as samples, and said, "I'll help you get your first case and help edit your report so that you understand what's included in it and what's required by the court system." So that was almost 12 years ago now, and I'm very grateful for him to show me this avenue that I can influence the public and influence law enforcement to make things better.
I was more than impressed by the fact that he was not an apologist for law enforcement, and they needed to be supported when they follow the legal standards. So I talked him into considering litigation consulting, and he did. Now he's got 250 cases under his belt.
Roy Taylor converts decades of experience into a shield for constitutional rights. From the federal courtroom to the podcast airwaves and back to the battlefields of Iraq, one principle remains constant: service above self.
Taylor Law Enforcement Consulting Group is exactly what it sounds like. It's a consulting group, and I consult primarily with attorneys who are involved in what we call a 1983 civil rights case. It's a federal case that looks at civil rights violations. Somebody is claiming a violation of one of the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Primarily, it's a Fourth Amendment violation, which would cover excessive use of force or an improper seizure. My job is to make sure that jurors or the trier of fact understands how police officers are trained, how police officer policies that guide them in their daily activities are formed, as well as what should have happened on the date in question of the case. When I get a case as an expert witness, the first thing I do is I give a free consultation to the attorney, and I ask them to tell me about the case, what the facts are, After I've heard their dissertation about the case, then I'll say, okay, I hear that there was excessive force used, or there was an improper search, or it may be, I don't hear anything. I don't hear that there's a constitutional violation. Explain what you believe it is. And if they can't answer that question to my satisfaction, I've explained to them I simply can't help them. But if the story allows me to see some clear-cut substantial violations of our Constitution, then I agree to take their retaining agreement. If I'm taking a plaintiff's case and I find out that maybe the attorney misled me somewhat, I'll have to call them and say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. If I write a report, it's going to be against your interest. But I will not bend my integrity to satisfy the attorney, whichever side they're on. My report would be the same, whether it was a plaintiff's attorney that hired me or a defendant's attorney that hired me. And the only thing we have is our integrity. After I review the material, my answer is going to be the same, no matter which side contracted me for my opinion. The moment that I believed that there was need for systematic change was as a young police officer, when I saw other officers that were senior to myself acting outside the scope of our policies and training. And I knew that as a police chief, I could impact that training so that these type of things would not happen. I also saw that there was a reduction in the amount of training that we were able to have, and it was because of budgetary constraints. But again, not sitting in the CEO chair, I wasn't aware of all the shortcomings and things that would curtail us from having the type of training we really needed. Once I became a police chief and saw what limited budgeting we had and the lack of ways to overcome it, I decided to become an instructor myself so that I could do these things at no cost to the community or to the agency, but benefit them through my providing that extra time. And so that's what I try to carry on in Taylor Law Enforcement Consulting Group, is the need for continued training, the need for policies that meet current legal standards, and when necessary to testify in court either for or against the police based on the circumstances.
Beyond the courtroom, the mission expands to systemic reform.
The systematic changes that I'm trying to make primarily involve crisis intervention. Again, people that are experiencing mental illness is just like people experiencing cancer or heart disease. It's something that's simply out of their control, and we have to treat them differently. We don't need to approach it like they're a bank robber and yell commands to drop the knife, and then shoot them. We need to step back, try to de-escalate the situation by increasing distance, turning off the lights or the siren, lowering the volume on our radio, to do things again to try to calm things down, and to introduce yourself. I'm not Chief Roy Taylor. Hi, my name's Roy. What's your name? What are you going to do with that knife? Are you going to try to hurt me with that knife? And so again, we're asking questions. That gives us an opportunity to see, is this person cognizant of what's going on? Does he understand what I'm saying? Or are they really experiencing some type of psychosis where their perception of reality just is not there? And that's dangerous. That's what I've really been passionate about because of the 6 cases I received in November 2016 that started me on my journey through my dissertation on making this crisis intervention training better and more available to all police officers. I've used social media fairly limitedly. I have a website, taylorconsultinggroup.org, that is the way that I drive business to my office primarily. I also subscribe to a number of services like Expert by Experts and TASA and other groups that contract with experts and are a one-stop shop for attorneys that are looking for specific experts for whatever type of case that they may have. So I have Facebook, LinkedIn, X, TikTok, very limited exposure. I do a podcast now called Internal Affairs with Dr. Roy Taylor, primarily on YouTube. So if you get a chance, please take a look at that. Explain some of my more interesting cases. Right now, I decided I'm going to kind of step back a little bit and talk about the cases that changed law enforcement throughout history, like Graham versus Connor and Tennessee versus Garner and Terry versus Ohio, because when I talk about those cases in the stories that I'm telling about the cases I've worked, I realize that maybe the general public is not familiar with that. So I've started at a ground level trying to build up that education. So as I complete those and go back to my stories, people will be able to say, well, I don't really understand Graham versus Connor. Well, they can scroll back through all the videos and they'll find the one on that topic. And that way they'll be able to educate themselves and walk away with a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on.
This dedication to saving lives was forged years earlier on a supply route in Iraq.
One of the things that I'm most proud of is my service in the military. I was deployed to Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom 2 from 2004 to the middle part of 2005. We were on our way back to Kuwait from northern Iraq, and we were ambushed. And one of my civilian truck drivers was shot twice in the chest. These civilian truck drivers were mostly Pakistani, and we didn't have any interpreters or any way really to communicate with them. With these gunshot wounds in his chest, while still under fire, I was able to get him out of his truck, perform emergency first aid, get him loaded into my vehicle, and start trying to coordinate immediate medical evacuation while still defending the rest of the convoy of 54 vehicles. I was awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for gallantry under deliberate enemy attack. But what I'm proud about is my medal was for saving a life and not taking a life. That I was able to expose myself to danger to protect somebody else from a different culture, from a different country, that was basically an indentured servant working for a contracted transportation company to the United States Army. And so it was very scary moments, but it was one that I was able to perform in, save a life, and continue the mission just like a soldier's supposed to do.
I've worked for Chief for the last 11 years, all the way from being a regular field officer all the way up to the assistant to the chief. You know, working here for the last 11 years has been great. You know, Chief's one of the experts in the industry.
Roy reclaims a controversial title to define a lifetime of excellence. The One Percenter isn't just a memoir, it's a field manual for the elite few willing to serve.
In general conversation with people throughout, the course of the day, and I'm a big Porsche guy, so I go to a lot of car shows, and I talk to the average people on the street. We get into conversations. I tell them I'm a police chief and I've been in law enforcement for 45 years, and I tell them some of my adventures, and I always hear, wow, you should write a book. So I finally decided, you know what, I need to, because one, it's a legacy for me that, after I'm gone, somebody may stumble across my grave in a military cemetery and say, I wonder who this guy was, that won the Bronze Star. I want to learn more about him. Well, here's a book. And so hopefully it'll be timeless. But what it does, other than just tell my story, I try to add life lessons and leadership lessons so that if you're an aspiring police officer and someday want to be a police chief, or you're a new officer in the military and you want to be a commander and a colonel someday, read this book, because it will give you those things that I learned. And it's not a touchy-feely good book, because that's not the way life is. This talks about the high points, and it talks about the low points, and how my resiliency and support that I had from friends and family, got me to the next level. So it's a good opportunity for you to take some of the pain out of your life, learn by my mistakes, learn how to set goals, and move forward with your life. This book has me in my dress police uniform. In the shadows, difficult to see, is me in my military dress uniform. And there's also Lady Liberty that holds the justice scales. That's in black, which is very difficult to see, but a close examination of the book cover kind of ties in everything that's in there. My pursuit for justice, my pursuit for service to humanity, both in the military and in law enforcement. A lot of people, the first thought I have when I hear being a one percenter is an outlaw motorcycle gang, but it's also used for the top 1% of wealth earners, but it also is only 1% of the public ever serves in law enforcement, serves in the military, gets a PhD. Only 1% of the public is a pilot. So I've accomplished all these things in my life, and I want you to be able to experience those and increase and enhance your life through what I've learned, and teaching you that you can be successful too. It is available on Amazon, and I hope that you'll buy a copy. It's also available in audiobook as well, so you can listen to it or get it downloaded on a Kindle.
Roy shatters the myth of overnight success, revealing the calculated endurance required to build an empire.
One of the best pieces of advice that I can give you is to remain resilient. You're not going to always have positive results. Sometimes you're going to fail. And when you fail, learn from it. Why did I fail? It's not the end of the world. Stay passionate about what your goals are. Be mindful of how you set goals. Goals need to be but goals need to be obtained within a certain time limit. Set those realistically. Sometimes we hear, oh, shoot for the stars. That's a mission to failure. There are too many stars out there. You can't go for all of them. You have to pick the closest star or milestone, whatever. But what's your initial goal going to be? So if you want to be an entrepreneur like I am, you need to start businesses that have other people working for you. But you need to be passionate about it, because you spend your average of a normal person, an average person spends 80% of their time working. I spend 110% of my time working. And that is one of the reasons that I'm successful, because how many people can run 3 businesses and deploy to a war zone and still be successful. So have a good support network, have realistic, achievable goals, and be resilient and understand that it doesn't come easy. It takes time. When I started my businesses, Capitol Special Police, after 9/11 happened, I knew that once the terrorists had attacked us successfully, the need for additional police officers would expound greater than we would be able to cover. So I started a private police department to meet those needs. Or it could be a Pizza Hut on Friday night after a football game. They're worried about a suicide bomber coming in. Are their beliefs real or likely? Probably not, but we want them to feel safe. So that's why I started Capitol Special Police. But it was 8 years before I ever took a paycheck from that business. I worked full-time in my federal government job, and I worked on the weekends and took days off to do things for my personal businesses. So I was working 7 days a week and not enjoying the fruits of my labor. I was reinvesting it into the company so that I could grow it. So now today, I don't have to work 5 or 6 hours a day to manage the business. I have great supervisors and leaders below me that take care of the daily trivial tasks, and I'm able to focus on the strategic tasks. So that's where you ultimately want to go, but you don't get there right away.
A life of service culminates in a vision for future guardians. The ultimate goal remains a society where justice is administered with both precision and compassion.
I'm looking forward to, as I still am an active police chief, so I expect to work another 3 to 4 years in that capacity. And then I want to start scaling back and enjoying the rest of my life. I want to travel, and one of my hobbies is I do race Porsches, and I travel to at least 2 different racetracks that I've not been to before every year. My home track is Virginia International Raceway, where I get to go at least twice a month to compete up there, and I hope to be able to do more of that in my retirement years. I plan on being an expert witness for as long as people think my experience and education is relevant. Technology is changing the way law enforcement is conducted today. AI is quickly becoming a valuable tool for law enforcement, but I don't ever see the Constitution changing. I don't really see the way that the police officers interact with public, even if we do have all these great whiz-bang tools. So I think I'll be relevant for a number of years, even after I leave full-time employment as a police chief. I hope that as the future leaders of law enforcement come in, that they'll be able to look at my legacy and say, Dr. Taylor did this, Dr. Taylor did that, he was successful here, and I think I can fill the gap that he left. And that's my goal. And if I can help mentor people along the way, I love doing that. I love to see people come to me and have frank discussions about policies and procedures, or the way that law enforcement is interacting with the community. Being a legacy maker means to me that I've made a positive impact on society. I've made changes in the law enforcement community, and hopefully end up saving lives ultimately, specifically those that are people suffering from a psychiatric disorder and have no control over that. So that's what it means to me to be a legacy maker, making those differences. I am Dr. Roy G. Taylor, and I am a legacy maker.